Welcome back to Riding the Pine. This is our review of Game 27 of the 2020-21 Chicago Blackhawks season. Tonight, the Blackhawks fell to the Dallas Stars by a score of 6-1, dropping their overall record to 13-9-5. But before we get to the game review, if you could do me a really big favor, hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already, as well as drop a comment down below if you have anything about the game that you want to talk about. If you want to congratulate Patrick Kane on 1,000 games, feel free to do that down below as well. And if you think anything we say is out of left field, let us know. We will be happy to converse with you down in the comment section. And with that, as usual, I am joined by Chai sports fan Joe. Joe, tough loss tonight, eh?
Yeah, just like I had mentioned, it's just one of those games. Um, you kind of felt the vibe after the first period, but I know when Janmark scored to kind of get us to 2-1, you thought maybe, all right, we'll kind of turn it on here. But then, I think Highmore took the offensive zone penalty, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. So, unfortunately, it's one of the games you would have liked to have at least gotten a point, and you don't get any. But I think that means Thursday's game is now really really big, especially having to play, six of your next seven against the top two teams in the division.
Well, I think too it's important because you want to keep Dallas from getting into a rhythm and kind of keep them floundering where they're at. You don't want to give them any reason at all to think they can get back into this playoff race.
Right.
So huge game on Thursday for both teams. Um, and look, Joe wasn't with me on the review that we uploaded for Sunday's game. But this is two games in a row now that really kind of leave a bad taste in your mouth. I can't really fault them too much on the Tampa game for obvious reasons, as I've already talked about. But tonight, I think the team was flat. It was garbage. The goaltending was garbage. Like I thought Boquist was bad tonight. Dahan almost scored on his own net. Uh, the defense as a whole was not very good tonight. Zadorov did not have a good game. This is probably his worst game in a while. Um, so it just kind of combined resulted into probably the worst game that we've seen since the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, probably those first few games, I'd say.
Yeah. So would you put this up there with those or the worst game since then?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say so. And maybe a lot of people say, well, what about the game, couple nights ago when we blew a 3-0 lead? But, like we had mentioned, Kyle, we lost Murphy to a hit that he shouldn't have been assessed what he was assessed for. And, Dahan went out with an injury. And so to, in essence, have just two, defensemen, veteran defensemen, and Keith and Zadorov alongside, four rookies or three rookies. Um, it just, it didn't bode well to that finish. So I don't want to say that was one of the Hawks' worst games, even though they did blow a 3-0 lead. But um, like you said, having those players on, not playing didn't help matters. So, but yeah, this game I'd say, yeah, like you said, nothing was really going right, and they couldn't really generate much in the offensive zone. The power play didn't do anything at all. I don't know how many shots did they have on their power play tonight.
I don't know. It couldn't have been many because they only
Yeah.
hit 22 in the whole game. So
So, and the penalty kill again, and even though they allowed the goal, the power play goal with 3 seconds left, I mean, we had talked about it was one that Subban's got to have. So, but I think that's the PK is still a concern, and hopefully the defense could kind of get things together. After, like I said, now we've been outscored 12-4 in our last two games, 12-1 since leading Tampa 3-0. So hopefully we can, rebound on Thursday.
Yeah, and I think like, even like they got killed at the faceoff circle, 61% to 39. I mean, that's rough. And like, look, um I hate continuing to bring this up, but I feel like we have to, you know, and I brought it up against the Tampa uh, game on Sunday. This team routinely right now is playing without $30 million in cap space. Sunday it was 40 million once Murphy was ejected. So, you have to take that into consideration when you look at them playing like Dallas, Tampa. These are teams that are up against the cap. And that, I mean, Dallas has got injuries, right? Like, Sagan's out. Radulov didn't play tonight. This was the first game that we saw Kudobin play. We did not see him the first two games in Dallas, but I don't really think he made much of a difference, to be honest. I don't think there was maybe three good scoring chances.
I was going to say he made a pretty good save, I think, on was it Kane and
Yeah. Well, I guess there were a couple on Kane, I think. And then was it that one on Soderberg too? I
yeah,
think it was
yeah.
Janmark and Soderberg again. That line, I tell you what, I don't know how they don't bring back Janmark and Soderberg, or at least try to, because it feels like those two may not provide you the top six scoring that we've been yammering about all season, but they do provide you, I think, that defensive awareness in your bottom six and at your two-way forward level that I think the Hawks were missing last year, to where they forecheck and they back check, and you've got, your sticks to break up passes and stuff. And, whether Soderberg can keep this up at 35, I don't know, but Janmark certainly, I think, and he's also a guy that can put the puck in the net. So those two have definitely got chemistry together. So that's, something to consider, I think, going into next season. Um, by the way, I believe it was with Wally, who I think runs the Chai Prospects account. Uh, we can talk about this later, but there is an interesting development now with Brent Seabrook retiring with the expansion draft, which I think is going to change the trade deadline a little bit. Um, now that the Blackhawks will not have to protect Brent Seabrook, they will be able to go back to the 7-3-1 formula instead of the 8-1 formula. So they're going to be able to protect an extra player. So they'll be able to protect Alex Nylander now, which is, I think, very interesting in the sense of, you know, what they do now with the trade deadline, as well as trying to move on. I would presume, I think everyone assumes that DeHaan's the guy they want taken. Um, Although Lucas Carlson will be able to be drafted as well, who picked up an assist tonight. Um, Ian Mitchell sat tonight. I know Joe had asked me before coming on what I thought that was kind of about, and I believe Colleton. For those of you that don't know, Colleton was asked about why he was scratched, and actually he was sent to the taxi squad, and it was just for a breather, and I believe that. I don't know if I would have done it tonight, but that's what they did, and I believe that. I, I I think everyone's kind of dumbfounded that Boquist hasn't been sat. And granted, he's played well the last few games here, um, but he had a horrible stretch to start the year. Obviously, I don't think he was good tonight. He really, I don't know what with him. Like he just looks he's not strong enough. I will say that flat out. Like I tweeted the other night, I think if he wants to be a top 4D in this league, he has to get stronger. He has to get stronger on the puck. Those bigger guys are just throwing him all over the ice. It doesn't work. Um, and he looks tentative. That's why I think like he would be served to go to Rockford and either Kalanick or Bodan or whoever Bowie if you have to anybody. I think Carlson until you get him some like more development. I think they called him up too early last year, and I think it stunted his development. I think they really screwed up. And I know if you talk to or not talk to, but if you listen to the Madhouse Hockey Podcast, Jay Zawoski has long talked about one of the reasons they thought John McDonough was fired was him meddling in hockey ops, and that they called Adam Boquist up last season to, I don't know, satisfy the fan base, if you will, if that's the correct kind of thought there, or way to put it. But
So how old is Bo? Is he 20?
yeah, he's 20.
Okay. So, I mean, at this point, do you give him?
Look, and I'm not like he hasn't been terrible since he came back from COVID, and he's definitely been putting up points. I mean, he didn't tonight, but he just, like I said, I feel like if they sent him down to Rockford to relax, just relax and like play top 4 minutes, not worry about wins and losses, not worry about making mistakes, get him working with Brian Campbell and get him in the weight room because, like I said, he has to get stronger. And Kirby, obviously, who we'll get to in a second, did that, came back way stronger in the bubble last year. And that was the major difference from him from the season to the playoff bubble was just the added upper body strength that he had where you couldn't push him off the puck or you couldn't check him. If you go to hit him, he wouldn't fall down kind of thing. And he could skate through the middle of the ice. Boquist needs to do that too, because when he's carrying the puck, guys are able to push him off of it. Or if he's going to back check and he's trying to break up a play, they just kind of push him over too. And he doesn't have that strength to go against the veteran big guys in the league. And, you know, um, Wyatt Kaiser, the Blackhawks' third round pick from this season, was named to the all rookie team up at University of Minnesota Duluth. Um, so, in a lot of ways, I think there's a lot of pressure on Boquist
Well, I was
because
going to say, is this kind of like, Boquist is 20. Do you give him after this year one more year? And if you don't see the kind of development that you were hoping to see when you drafted this kid, at that point, do you just try to trade him and get something for him, or do you?
I don't know because so here's the thing. You've got I don't know. The speculation is that now Kaiser's probably gonna arrive a lot sooner, and he looks more of like a Duncan Keith, Ian Mitchell mold. That he's probably going to arrive after next season,
Mhm.
and again, that'll be his age 20 season if he does come in that year because he's 18 now. I believe his birthday is July 31st, so he's a really young player.
Okay.
But the other thing is you've got Alex Vlasic at Boston, who's also on the horizon. So those two are in college and not in the system yet. You've got the guys, was it Michael Krudel and Isaac Phillips, who are with the Hogs who are on AHL only deals because of COVID. I don't know if those guys are going to factor into anything. I think Phillips is impressed a little bit. Um, but you've also got Alec Regula down there who, again, third round pick, uh, 6'4", has size, something they don't really have. I think he has 3 points in 8 games that I looked at. So if he develops, kind of like if he takes a Bodan trajectory, you know, and I think that's kind of my point. We've only seen Kalanick once, and we didn't see much of him, and it was a shit show of a game. So it's really hard to evaluate what we saw from Kalanick. I'm almost kind of saddened that that was his first game. But if Lucas Carlson is not drafted, you at some point, like, you've got to look at Boquist and go, are you like, you got to do something, kid, because yes, you put up, what was it, like 4 points in 5 games or 6 points in 5 games, something like that over this course. But you're also making a lot of defensive errors. And, look, if he's going to be a third pair defenseman, I guess that's fine. But then you got to start looking at where the other guys fit. So I think Mitchell's a mainstay at this point. So you've got Keith and Mitchell. Then you've got uh, two spots because DeHaan's going to be gone. So if Zadorov and Boquist, which again, I don't mind that pairing actually, if that's your third pair, then, you know, and well, I don't know if I like that pair or not either. I'll come back to that. But you still got two guys you need to fill in. So you got Bodan and Kalanick, you got Regula, and then the other two guys I just mentioned that are in college. So how many guys is that? Is that 5 guys for 2 spots?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the look. Again, their defense is just loaded and brimming with talent right now. But um, Zadorov, I feel like one of Zadorov or Boquist has to go. And I don't know. I honestly don't know who you keep because Alex Vlasic has Zadorov's size. He's 6'6". Regula has his size at 6'4". Not as big, right? I think Zadorov is Zadorov 6'6" or 6'7".
Yeah, I think he's like 6'7".
Okay, so he's an inch taller than Vlasic. But again, you'll sacrifice that if you need to, that inch.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like at some point decisions are going to have to start being made as to who, we're about halfway through this season now. We will be at the end of Thursday's game. And guys need to start, cementing themselves as to where they're going to fit because, a year from now, when assuming this, development continues and the trajectory continues, um, you're going to want to move some of these guys for assets to go on runs, probably. So I don't know. I need to start seeing more out of Boquist in terms of, I mean, just getting stronger, right? Like just that alone, and that's a simple thing. Like that's just him taking the initiative and going to the weight room. I don't understand why that hasn't happened yet because he is 20 now, or maybe even 21 at this point. So I don't know what the holdup there is, but I haven't seen any kind of strength increase from him that I think is necessary. But yeah, I don't know why I went on this rant on Boquist, but I just thought like he was noticeable tonight. I guess to me, for those reasons, he wasn't strong on the puck. He was getting kind of thrown around. He looked tentative again. Um, and again, when you have Ian Mitchell out of the lineup, and again, I don't think they lost tonight because Mitchell was out of the lineup, but um, he's been one of their better top 4D. So when you hit Boquist kind of out running around like a chicken with his head cut off, doesn't look good. And again, DeHaan almost put the puck in his own net again. He's done that. Well, I think he has scored on his own net this season. And I think this is the second save that's been saved for him. So yeah, I mean Carlson, you could argue Carlson may him and Keith were the two best defensemen probably tonight.
Yeah.
Maybe
No.
Murphy. Carlson had an assist, like I said. Played 15 minutes. Keith was Keith. Murph was Murph. Do you think any of this Patrick Kane hoopla affected this game at all? In the sense
I
of,
mean, it could have. I mean, I'm sure they maybe the pressure kind of got to them. It's like, oh, we want to go out there, we want to win and get a win for Kaner's 1,000th game, and we want to make sure Kaner gets a goal or whatever because it's his 1,000th game. I mean, I'm sure that does play into it a little bit. Because the focus is really more on that than it is sometimes on the game. But I mean, you get into the game, I think that kind of goes away. But maybe like you see the video tributes. I know even Dallas put something on their board tonight to commemorate it. So it's like you get into game mode, you get out of game mode, you get into you go back and forth, and I think that could kind of mess with the psyche sometimes a little bit.
well, and I mean the team themselves. I mean they did the whole Kane counting to 1,000 video, which if you haven't watched it, um, I would suggest watching it. There's some good Easter eggs in there. Um, I asked Joe. I know Joe kind of turned it off. I think he said after about 10
Yeah,
minutes,
I
but
wasn't into it, but hey,
it was
for those,
putting him to sleep. So I guess it was working.
yeah. I mean, I could see how because it really is like very soothing and like it has that like, all right, yeah, if you keep listening to this, you will fall asleep kind of vibe.
I
But
I, I just want to know who thought of that, and then like why,
yeah,
and
of all
like
things to do, I mean, but credit the social media team, I guess, with the Blackhawks
well, and
because
credit Patrick for doing that. I mean, with a
yeah.
4-month-old baby. I mean,
I mean, I feel like that's what I was gonna say. Do you think he did that all at once, or did he record it in like?
oh, he for sure did that at like in probably 100 or more edits,
Yeah.
and they
I was
clipped
gonna
it
say he probably
together.
did, all right, I'll count to 10 today, and then I'll count to 20 tomorrow, and I'll do it over a span of like,
Yeah,
whatever how many days to get to 1,000. So,
yeah.
but
Well, and then I'd be curious. I'm sure he didn't. Somebody did the twinkle twinkle. Whoever wrote that little spin on Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, that he does, I think about at the 49-minute mark. Uh, so right towards the end. And I don't know. It just seems like they did all of this stuff, and then we saw Taves for the first time all season. He recorded a 30-second shout out to Kane. Um, saw Hosa, we saw Savvy, we saw.
I saw the video, yeah, Coach Q.
Yeah, did they air that or was that just on Twitter?
I think it was on Bleacher Nation Blackhawks posted a video of Coach Q.
I know they got Jarmelson to do one. Um, yeah, but well, and then like it got even kind of. This may sound shitty for me to say, but even I was getting sick of it, like during the broadcast, because they had his mom on there. They
Yeah,
had
sisters.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it was like, dude, your guys are going so overboard with this. Like,
Well, right, and I feel like because Keith and Seabrook, have played in 1,000 games too, haven't they?
yeah, and they didn't get anything like
I
that.
said I don't remember like it being this hype for their 1,000th game.
And maybe they were doing it because there weren't fans or anything like that. Because obviously, Keith and Seabrook had ceremonies, and even correct me if I'm wrong, but well, and Hosa had one too. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Chris Kunitz had one a couple of years ago too.
Oh,
I think.
I don't remember his. I did, or did the Blackhawks not have a video? Did they just maybe because maybe they just honored him on the ice?
Well, yeah, they did a whole thing because he got like a picture, an oil, I think it was oil painting of him where I think pretty much everywhere he's played. So Anaheim, Chicago, Pittsburgh, and they didn't. It was notable because they didn't. Tampa was on there. It was notable because they didn't include Atlanta because he did play in Atlanta for like 15 games, and I was back. I mean, missed my Thrashers, but um, yeah, I thought that was interesting, and maybe he was fine with that not being on there, but um yeah, I think that was for his 1000th game, and I assume he got the silver stick like everybody gets. And uh, I was thinking about this because I don't know if was it Savvy or Chelly. Chelios did a video. Did Roenick do one?
No, I didn't see one from him.
That's odd.
Hmm. I mean, I
Um,
think he shouted out to him on Twitter. I
okay.
believe, but I don't
Well,
think
you
he.
know what? I guess it's not odd. They're probably wanting to stay away from Jr.
Yeah,
Which is unfortunate.
right. Because yeah, he was my favorite player growing up, so I'll defend him till the day he dies.
Yeah,
So
well, I think Jr. would be like if Eddie Olczyk ever leaves for like a GM job or whatever, maybe they'll give it to Sharp. But honestly, I think Jr. would be a great color commentary.
he would, but he's in this society, and unfortunately, and I say that, but in this kind of society, Jr. would never last because he's got no filter. He's too
Yeah,
out.
honestly, I'm surprised Pat Foley has lasted this long, and
So
I mean, he's already had his proverbial tit in the ringer for was he's called somebody a taco or something last year in Germany.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like yeah, with Pat Foley, the only way he's gonna go out is if he retires
Well, I
because
don't know, man. They forced Don Cherry out, right, over some stupid shit.
right. But I think with Pat, at least it's not to the point where it's not at Don Cherry's level. So I think if it gets
Yeah, I
there,
guess he's not. He doesn't say as much controversial things as that, and the audience obviously is much lower. But
right, right.
um,
So
yeah, I don't know. It's just
yeah, I know with Jr. the way he comes out and says things sometimes. Yeah, he
oh
would never.
god, I'd pay good money to see him and Foley do broadcasts together. That would be,
Yeah.
especially
Oh
if you gave Jr. or even I swear sometimes I think Foley's drinking back there too, but
yeah.
you got
Yeah.
JR a little liquored up. Oh
I
man.
mean, although sometimes, yeah, like when Foley and Edzo go on their like laugh attacks, that I mean, I sometimes can't help but laugh too. So, but
Yeah. Well, and they do get a little ridiculous too sometimes. So
yeah,
Foley's baby talk gets a little old sometimes.
right, right.
Um I guess but going back to the game, Janmark scored the Hawks lone goal tonight. He was a -3. Um I like, I talked about him in Soderberg. Janmark has got speed, and he's just I don't know if I would call him maybe a less gritty, more developed Hagel, but there's something similar there, I think, to where I don't know, like he's just I think a guy that you want to keep around. Like that's the thing. I was even thinking about that when I was watching the game tonight. It's like, well, Joe's always asking about, keep everything in perspective and, you know, improve the team for the future. And if
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like do the now you look at these next what 7 games now. Is this the determination of whether we keep Yanmark or trade Yanmark at the deadline?
I don't know. Like it's so hard to get the fact that Doc is skating leads me to believe that they're not going to really do anything. But I guess we can we'll talk about Subban at the end here. But so some rumors. The NHL Board of Governors met, and they discussed the draft. Now, we've talked about the speculation is that the draft was going to be moved to next year, and they would just hold two separate drafts. That was the plan until the Players Association, I guess, in the meeting said that they're not okay with that, and that if you're going to go ahead and do that, then we're going to make rule changes. And I don't know what rule changes those were, but it seems like the owners in the league were not okay with those changes. So right now, the draft is still happening in July, and as people have speculated, uh, I don't know if teams are going to be wanting to trade. Well, to trade or trade for those draft picks because they haven't had time to scout any of these players. I think it goes both ways. Like I heard one argument that was, well, if you're a trading team that's trading away the pick, you don't really want to trade that pick away because, you know, you don't really know anything about the draft really. And I think it goes from a more perspective of the acquiring team of why the hell would we want to get a pick when we haven't even trade for a pick when we don't even know any of these players? Like it's a literal crapshoot in this draft right now. Like even no, like, and this is on top of the draft being weak to begin with. Nobody knows who the consent. There is no consensus first overall pick. So if there are trades, I think they're going to be maybe player for player, or like let's trade a Brent Seabrook type contract for something, or we'll take this bad contract so you can have the cap space to acquire X player on an expiring deal, or whatever. Like, I don't think the trade like if the draft goes forward as is, I don't think we're going to see many trades at all this year. And I think if we do see any, I think they're actually going to happen relatively soon, because the trade deadline is what, the 8th or 12th of April?
It's the 12th of April, so we're about a month away.
Yeah. So I would expect if they're like, I think the trades, well, because that's the other thing. So there probably won't be trades between American and Canadian teams because of the 2-week quarantine. And if there are, I would assume it would happen like right now, because like otherwise you're not going to wait to deadline day when there's a month of the season left and then not have your trade acquisition for 2 weeks. Like, that's not going to happen. Or if it does happen, whoever the GM is should be fired. So that's kind of a monkey wrench. And then also the speculation is that there are going to be rule changes to the draft lottery. And we're batting 100, I swear, on this podcast, because we've talked about all of this stuff, and about what changes they would have to the draft lottery, that being. And I remember specifically mentioning the Edmonton Oilers, and I kind of, I put Joe to work, and he went and looked up all of the former first overall picks and who was who, and Yakupov and all that. You remember that, right, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these rule changes, or this rule change that's speculated to be implemented to the lottery, would be that we're not going to allow that anymore. We're not going to allow a team like Edmonton to get the 3 consecutive first overall picks.
Which to me, I don't know, Kyle. It's like, how is that something that you can just control? All right, hey, the
Well, it
lottery
is
balls
interesting,
fall
right? Because
yeah, it's like, the lottery balls fall your way. They fall your way, whether it happens one time, 2 times, 3 times in a row. You're getting lucky. It's lucky. So,
what makes it really weird? Okay, so the rule, as far as I've been told and read, is that it will be you can win the lottery. And by win the lottery, I don't mean get first overall. I mean, you move up to a top 3 pick because the draft lottery now encompasses the first 3 picks, i.e., the Hawks moving up to get Kirby Doc third overall. So the rule would be that you can only pick in the top 3 spots, let's just put it that way, twice in 5 years. In other words, the Hawks over the next 3 years, because it's been a year since they got Doc, could only pick in one of those 3 seasons a top 3 pick if they're, if they were to land in the lottery. Or maybe to be even more clear, New York, who got Kako the year that Hawks got Doc with the second overall pick, and then they got Lafreniere with a number 1 overall pick last year. They will not be able to be in the lottery for the next 3 seasons. And New Jersey is probably in that boat too, where they're exempt for maybe a year or 2 years. Because was he sure? What year was he sure? Was he 2017? So maybe they got 1 year left on that because they got Jack Hughes a few years ago. So, yeah. And I don't necessarily think that's a horrible rule, but it would be weird, right? So, like, let's say New Jersey, New York, and Chicago, and who's in Buffalo. We're to all be like dead last for the next, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years. They were the worst teams in the league. Detroit, even though they haven't hit a pick yet. I guess we'll leave Detroit out since they haven't had a top 3 pick yet. But that would conceivably mean that teams, what I name 4 teams, so teams 5 through 15 then would all have increased odds to win the lottery, right? Because if the Hawks got their second top 3 pick, and with New Jersey and New York already being exempt, let's say Buffalo got a top 3 pick, same year the Hawks do. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're exempting literally, like you could potentially be exempting 4 or 5, or even I guess as many as 6, if you consider that it's 3 picks. You could be exempting in the future the 6 worst teams in the league from winning the lottery. That to me is like, see, that's where you get into a problem, right? Like you're trying to make it fair. I understand that. But in the ballpark, if somehow all 6 of those bottom teams have over the course of those 5 seasons had 2 top 3 picks, which again, we've already got 2 teams that would be exempt and 2 teams in Buffalo and Chicago, which would and LA, I guess, would only have 1 shot to get another top 3 pick. So that would just be insane to me to have this, like,
Yeah, and it's just like I don't know. I mean, to me, it's like how do you prevent it's like, and I get you're trying to prevent tanking and all that. That I understand, but
well,
you know what?
and the crazy thing is too, I didn't even mention this, that then affects your draft pick value.
Hey, well, and it's like whatever, the teams that finish with the worst, obviously the worst records, or don't make the postseason, all whatever, get into the lottery, and obviously you can only move up X amount of spots. But it's like, you know what? How do you prevent? It's just it's literally lottery balls have to fall your way, and obviously the odds of them falling your way in consecutive years or more than two straight years are truly slim and none. But I mean, there is still a chance it can happen. But it's luck. So it's like I just don't see how they can make that work. You know what? Hey, if a team wins the lottery and gets to move up to the first overall pick or whatever the case may
Yeah,
be,
see, it would make more sense to me if they just said, look, we're going to call this the Oilers rule. You can't win the lottery 3 years in a row. So if you win it twice, and by win the lottery, I mean first overall pick, like you can still get a top 3 pick, but you can't, like, we'll allow it for back-to-back drafts that you can win the first overall pick, but we're not allowing it for 3 straight drafts. That's ridiculous, especially when you consider where the league is at now, and that it's I guess it's a good thing for hockey, right? In a sense to where maybe more than any other sport, really, other than maybe basketball, where the number 1 overall pick in a draft is like a no-brainer superstar usually. I mean, Yakupov would probably be the last first overall pick that was awful. And that was 8 years ago, 7 years ago.
but
And he,
I mean, I guess I'm just playing devil's advocate, but like, why are you penalizing a team when they didn't do anything? It's not that their fault that they keep winning the lottery. It's literally the balls are just happen to fall in their number
well,
to be drawn.
I think part of that is to force ownership. Let's call that the Cubs rule. We don't want a team, or in this case, maybe the Sabres or the Maple Leafs rule, where you have a fan base that refuses to hold their ownership accountable and continues to fill the stands to the point where you have ownership that just doesn't give a fuck and they don't put any money into the team. Look, let's face it. If the Blackhawks did not have the scouting department that they have right now, this team would be screwed. Because, I mean, look, gotta love Bowman, sure, but this scouting department saved his ass without question. You look from Kurashev to Doc to the European scouting with Kubalik, Lankinen, Suter, Panarin, all these guys, even the guys they've dealt for assets, Cahoon, Ruda, Kempney, all these guys that they've been able to bring in. That exists because Rocky and I guess now Danny Wirtz. I guess Danny Wirtz is the one running the team now. Rocky doesn't have much to do with it anymore. But that's because that family has put the money into that scouting. The Blackhawks have, I think, the largest scouting department in the league. And if it's not, it's top 3. And I think, that's something to say for ownership groups to come into the league. Like, hey, you need to do stuff like this to make sure your team succeeds. It's not enough to just sign free agents and draft, Canadian players or American born players. Like, you need to actively be proactive in trying to improve your team. And sure, I think that works a lot better when you have fans, call them White Sox fans, or I don't know, Hawks fans from the early 2000s who just said, all right, I've had enough of this shit. I'm not paying this money anymore to watch this team. This team is garbage. And revenues fell. And then, they come in and they go, we got to do something. Otherwise, we're going to have to sell the team. I think that's part of this, is that they're trying to get ownership to make efforts to build their franchise, if you will, to where it's successful, rather than simply just relying on luck of the draft. And in the case of like not Toronto, in the case of Tampa, like it is like, or Florida anyway. And I wouldn't knock Florida so much anymore, but because, they've struggled, obviously. But with Tampa, this team drafted well. Give Steve Yzerman credit. But look at the position they're in now. They've got guys like Steven Stamkos taking $3 to $4 million pay cuts than what another team would pay him because of their tax rates there. So they're able to basically circumvent the salary cap because of the state income tax laws in Florida. Same thing in Texas. If Dallas were to ever do something similar, which they're not, but Florida might, down in Miami might be able to exploit this now. Nashville's the same sort of way where your W-2 income isn't taxed. It's just your investment income. So, like you want to keep your league competitive. And that's seriously, that's the beauty of the National Hockey League. I feel like any team can win. It's there's parity across the board. Detroit may be dog shit, but they can win against the best team on any given night. And with the talent overseas and the game from just the expansion, the players that we've gotten because of the expansion from the 90s and 2000s when Joe and I were growing up. Austin Matthews is from Arizona. You look at the kids coming from Florida now. All these players from Cali that are coming in, these non-traditional hockey markets that are now producing talent. You add that in with the Eastern European nations, not even Eastern anymore, but all these German players that are coming over. So, the league is very healthy in that regard, and that's why we're able to see all these expansion teams. But I think with these rules, what they're trying to do, I'm going on a long rant here, but they're basically trying to get the owners to not just be what Jerry Reinsdorf basically has done with the Bulls for the last 20 years since Jordan quit. I mean, I haven't been paying much attention to the Bulls. I know they've been playing better this year, but it's an embarrassment that the Chicago Bulls have been where they've been the last 20 years. It's an embarrassment that it took 110 fucking years. I know it was 108. Let's just say 110 for the Cubs to win a goddamn championship. I mean, ridiculous. And yes, that creates moments, obviously. When Toronto wins their next cup, that'll be a moment. Just like it was for the Hawks. It was the first time in 49 years for the Hawks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're gonna have moments like that. But it's better to have those moments when you can say, we've been to the World Series, we've been to the final, we've been in the playoffs X amount. Think about San Jose. San Jose is like the perfect example of it. This is truly right now. The Sharks have been around since what, 94?
I think 93. Yeah.
Okay, 93. So they've been around almost 30 years. And this is really the first time they've ever really struggled. They've been like Detroit, basically, perennially in the playoffs, perennially with good teams, whether it's with Nabokov or Niemi or whoever in net, Toskala, Kiprasov, all these guys they've had throughout the years, JR the one year, Thornton, Marlowe, Pavelski, all these guys. And just now are they really starting to go through a little bit of a rough patch. And that's, I think, what the league is trying to do to get those teams, not just those teams, but all teams to basically try, if you will, to not be horrible. But yeah, that was a long-winded answer to that, or me opining on that. But I think when you include the first three picks, I think you're really you're opening yourself up to some danger where, like, a team like Pittsburgh or Toronto, like next year, when the next Connor in 2022 with Shane Wright, the next Connor McDavid is in the draft. Let's say some freak injury happens and Austin Matthews or Marner is injured. And then they're in the draft lottery. And now, because, we've got these new rules, X teams are exempt. So now the draft odds fluctuate, and the fucking Maple Leafs end up with the next Connor McDavid that's on an entry-level contract for the next 3 seasons. Or say it happens to Edmonton again, and they've got McDavid, and then they get the next McDavid. I mean, I think that's the concern, I think, when you start going, well, if you've gotten the third pick 2 years in a row, you're now exempt. And especially in a year like this, right, where there is no consensus number 1 overall pick, and you haven't had the opportunity to scout any of these players other than watching a freaking handheld camera of them, like video camera, iPhone camera. I don't know. I just think you're asking for trouble. I understand the idea, obviously, but I just feel like they're going too far, if you will. So I guess in the long run, I mostly agree with Joe, I guess is what I'm saying. I would chop that down to just the first overall pick. Let's talk about Subban. Let's get back to the game. So tonight was not a good night for Subban. He stopped 31 to 37 shots, 838 save percentage. What did you think about Subban tonight?
Well, he, had a kind of an off night. Obviously, the rebound control is the big key with him, and I think I mentioned, when he's in net, our defense have to be a little bit more aware, and they got to be, especially, parked out in front of the net, not necessarily right on top of them, but you have to know where to be, because let's just face it, Subban's going to give up rebounds, and they're not going to be pretty. But I know in the game against Tampa Bay that we won 4-3 in a shootout, I felt like our defense did a pretty good job clearing the pucks out in front of the net. When he'd give up some egregious rebounds. Tonight, when they don't do that, when his defense really doesn't bail him out, you see what happens. A couple of those, were rebounds right to Dallas players, and they didn't miss. So I know on the breakaway to Pavelski, and I think it was Dallas's second goal, where he kicked it off his pads and went right in front of the net, and our defenseman wasn't there, and it went right to whoever it went to, and they buried it to make it 2-0. So I think that's what we've learned to expect from Malcolm Subban is, your defense has to be on top of their game. And if they're not, the puck's going to end up in the back of your net maybe more times than if Subban wasn't in the back of the net, or wasn't playing goal, I should say.
Yeah, I know I saw one of the beat writers at least trying to defend Subban based off his record in his last 6 games. And that's, there's validity to that. But there's also validity to going, hey, this is a guy that's played 70 games plus now in the league. And for the vast majority of that, he's been awful. And to me, look, he's fine, I guess, for this season. I just think at going into next year, they have to find a different backup. And I don't think it's Colin Delia anymore either. Delia has struggled even in his AHL conditioning stint. So, they signed Nalimov, they didn't, Rockford did, who was a Hawks prospect. He is 27 years old, been playing in the KHL for a while. Had some pretty respectable numbers. He's fallen off a little bit the last couple seasons. I know he was in China or playing for a Chinese team, I think, over there for one season, and that didn't go well. I can't imagine why. But we'll see what he does in Rockford. But even with that, I still think you might want to go and get a veteran goalie. And to be honest, look, everyone's going on about playing the kids and playing the youth and everything. And yes, we've done that, and we're going to continue to do that. But in terms of goaltending, Subban's not a rookie. Like, I don't know where this like, he's been around since 2013. This kid's been in the league for this is like his 8th season in pro hockey. This is not somebody who's, this isn't his first rodeo, so to speak, like Lankinen. And even Lankinen's been in Rockford, right, for 2 years. So I just don't know if I buy that. And I think if you're Stan Bowman and you're looking at projecting, Kirby Doc, we haven't mentioned, but he is skating now. He looks, I think, tentatively like he'll be ready to go by the end of the month. So that means he's going to get about a month of the season in from April to May. And assuming you make the playoffs, I don't think Taves comes back, but assuming you have Doc and potentially Nylander, if you can add a veteran goalie for a playoff run, I think you do that. And you can, with this COVID protocol, there's been a lot of goalies that have been put on waivers, like good goalies too, not goalies that are just garbage. Like, I don't know, Craig Anderson, right? Or any of these goalies. I know Craig Anderson's 40 some freaking years old, but it's Craig Anderson, and that's a veteran guy who can probably come in and even mentor Lankinen, if you will. I think there's value in that. And it's like I feel bad because it feels like you're singling out Subban after one game, but the reality is even against Tampa, as Joe mentioned, he wasn't exactly good. He gave up a lot of rebounds. In fact, I think the third goal against Tampa was a rebound goal where it went off one of his pads, flew out in front of the net, and they banked it into an empty net. There were at least 2 out of the 6 goals tonight that were that way.
Yeah.
Pavelski's breakaway goal was stopped, and then the rebound was in. And I don't think he's weird, because Jay Zawaski always talks about how he doesn't, when he stops the puck, it's like he doesn't know where it is. And I'm going to take that a step further and expound upon that. I think he doesn't know where it is because he's not seeing the puck. Like, I think it just hits him. I don't know if it's just because he's big or if he's lucky or whatever it is. Like, even tonight, there were instances where, like, the puck would hit his pad, then it would hit the shaft of his stick, and then it would go wide. Or it would hit his shoulder and then go wide, or whatever. And you're just watching it and you're like, oh God, that's going to jump out in front, isn't it? Or that's going to whatever. And then there was a shot from the point. I don't know who it was, or just outside the slot, I guess. And I don't know who it was, but he saw it and he gobbled it up. And that's I think when he sees the puck, there's no rebound. But when he's not seeing it, there's rebounds. It seems like, or he sees it at the last second, let's say, and then he gets a piece of it, and then it rebounds somewhere or something. Like, because I know me and Joe talked about like Jimmy Waite working on rebound control with him, and they've talked about that. They've worked on that with him. So I'm like, there's got to be something else that's causing him to give up those rebounds than just rebound control. Like, is it reaction time? Is it not seeing the puck? Like, what is it? Does he need contacts? Does he have contacts? Like, I don't know what it is, but like was it the power play goal, the third goal where he did the Dorn for Major League Olay bullshit, and he just missed and whiffed on the glove save where people were thinking DeHaan could have stopped it. Like, that's a reaction. Well, both a reaction and potentially a vision problem. Because did he see it late? Or did he see it and he was just slow? Or what was it? Like, and look, when Boston and Vegas both give up on you, there's reasons for that. And those are organizations that know their shit. And I don't know. Like, I just feel like this team would be better served with getting a veteran netminder, at least for
Well, I
next.
just like imagine if they, if they kept Robin Leonard and went with like a Leonard Lincoln and kind of
Oh yeah, for sure.
duo.
But and I mean, they would have had the cap space, right? Because they've got, who would they have, about 3 going into this season, and they could have made it work. They couldn't have. Maybe you don't bring in Soderberg, and that saves $1 million. They could have figured out a way to make that work. Yeah, I don't know. And that would have been nice though, to have a vet to groom Lankinen. But even though Lankinen's 26, going on 26, so he's ready to be a starter. So Leonard may not have been the guy you want for that either. But I don't know. Like, there's got to be a guy out there that's getting put on waivers because other teams are moving on from him or whatever. That even if you want to play Subban, right, like as the backup, just having that veteran netminder around would be, I think, beneficial. But anyway, yeah, Subban was not good tonight. And I know you mentioned, Joe, that the defense needs to be aware of when he's playing, and that they got to do a better job of clearing the pucks out in the zone and getting to those rebounds he gives up. But at the same time, it's like, and I'm not suggesting they have no confidence in him, but just like when when Janmark got that goal immediately into the second period, and then it's given right back, it's like, there goes the momentum. Now we're down 2 goals again. And it's like, you need a save, and like you need your goalie to pick you up. And I just don't know if they believe he can do that. Like, you got to have faith in your netminders too. And when stuff isn't going right, and you have those type of things happen, and it just becomes a snowball effect. Like, the whole team was bad tonight.
Right.
So I don't know. Anyway, let's preview Thursday's matchup. Obviously, we mentioned big game. I think it's a must win for both teams for various reasons. I expect Kudobin will be back in net for Dallas. I expect Lankinen. I think Joe will probably agree with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think Lincoln gets back in there for Thursday.
Yeah. So the question would be, I guess, defensively, does Mitchell get back in?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Do you go with 7D?
Unless you draw maybe Carlson back out.
What do you mean draw back out? He would
Or
have.
like Carlson or Mitchell get in there and was Carlson in
Yeah, it
there
was.
tonight?
Yeah. I think he was
Okay,
one of their best.
I didn't know unless you just roll with 6 versus 7, but
Yeah, so Carlson would come out if they just roll with 6 if Mitchell plays.
okay.
If they roll with 7, it could be Carlson. Did they send Kalanick back down, or is he with them on the trip?
I think he's with them on the trip. I don't know if he's on the taxi squad or what, but
I think they called Bodan up, didn't they too?
maybe I don't remember.
Let me look. I think he did. I know they called up Puri. Dun, 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 dun. What's this? I don't want that. I don't know. I think they called him up though. But yeah. Yeah, I think Mitchell for sure gets in. The question I think is, do you go a more defensive game and play the 7 again? Or do you just stick with what they have? I think they probably just stick with 6.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But yeah, must-win game for both teams. Dallas is looking to get back in the thick of things. The Hawks are looking to kind of crush their dreams, which they would have been able to do with a better effort tonight and winning Thursday. But anyway, that will wrap up this post-game review of game 27 of the 2020-21 Chicago Blackhawks season. As mentioned, the Blackhawks fell tonight to the Dallas Stars by a score of 6-1, dropping their overall record to 13-9-5 on the season. We will be back with you Friday morning with our review of game 28, the halfway mark of this COVID shortened 2021 season. Until then, everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, check in with your loved ones, including your friends. Make sure everybody's doing okay. And let's go, Hawks.
All right, thanks again for listening, everybody, and yeah, we'll see you on Thursday, and hopefully we'll be talking about a better outcome.